Welcome to Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast. This show is brought to you by McCoy's Auto Repair in Radford, Virginia. Virginia Tech beat Boston College 48-22, Rob. That was awesome. We said the Louisville game was the opposite of the Syracuse game. This did it again. It did the old switch up.
Yeah, a switcheroo, a good switcheroo, back the other way. So let's hope that the alternating does not continue. That would not be good for this upcoming weekend. But it was an awesome game and in hand pretty early, so that made it nice.
It sure did. A stress-free visit to Chestnut Hill, for the most part, is very nice. Why don't you give us a cheers?
Cheers to, I guess just cheers to the cusp of bowl eligibility. So we are clawing there with our fingernails and trying to get there piece by piece. So on the cusp at this point. So cheers.
Cheers to that, man. Yeah, after week 4 of this season, it was impossible to feel like we'd get to this point where we'd have 2 games left with a chance to clinch bowl eligibility.
Yep.
Let's start with just a couple notes on the basketball team before we get to playoff rankings and the depth chart and the game recap. Both our men's and our women's teams lost at the tail end of last week. The women fought valiantly against Iowa, and Caitlin Clark just proved to be a little too much and wasn't all on her own because the refs certainly had her back in that one. But for having 3 new starters and just a change up to the lineup in general, I thought they played pretty well, and it was close. We had a chance at the end or there, could have gone either way. But I think this women's team will be back and go deep in the tournament yet again.
Yeah, and it's a tough team and tough game, but it's early in the season. There is a lot of basketball to play, and especially in basketball, what really matters ultimately, you want to win the ACC, you want to do all those things, but the tournament is really where things get exciting, and I have all of that well ahead of them, so it's all good.
I was asking Ed, the basketball guy from the Hokie Hoops pod, like, what's the ceiling on this team? Because we do have a bunch of young new players and we have the stalwarts in Amor and Kitley. Like, is there a chance the ceiling on this team is potentially higher than last year's? And he's like, well, it's going to be hard to outdo the ceiling of a Final Four, but you have some upside. There's a lot of upside with some of these younger players on this team. And we're going to have to see how Coach Kenny gets it together throughout the season.
Nice.
The men lost to South Carolina. This wasn't as high profile a matchup, neither team being ranked. And South Carolina, I believe, was picked last in the SEC. one of the worst teams as from a projection standpoint. They didn't look that bad to me when we were playing.
Yeah. So unlike a respectable loss in the Iowa game for the women's team, not a great loss for the men's team. So they have everything ahead of them, and they may need it if we stub our toe anymore like this as we kind of move through what's before we get into ACC play. Now's the time to work through the kinks, but they got some work to do.
I thought it was interesting how both of those games against Power 5 teams kind of had the same flow to them, like a back and forth. The other team was ahead for most of the game, but we battled back, and then we just couldn't make a few plays at the end to get the W. That loss could loom large, although South Carolina really shot the ball well. Maybe if that continues, they'll have a strong season. But we did play Campbell today. We are recording on Wednesday night, and we won. And so we got our second win of the season. Lynn Kidd had 24 and 14, I believe. And so he's doing work. The rest of the team, maybe not as strong a performance tonight. I think Couture played okay. But I'm going to go back and look at some of the stuff later. We got to see how it shakes out. We got a lot of new faces too, and see how they come together as we move through the rest of our non-conference schedule. But I am looking forward to.
Your
Go ahead.
pointers, did you give him any? Obviously, yeah, that's probably what
You know,
happened.
I just asked him what he'd been working on, and clearly he's been working on a lot, man. His shooting percentage, I know he's a big man, but like
Mhm.
it's very high. He was making his free throws early in the game tonight. Like you gotta love that.
Yep.
All right. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the college football playoff rankings and just your reaction to last weekend because tried to have you on the Monday show. There was a little bit of an audio issue, probably my fault. And so we had the Florida State Miami game. We had Washington, Utah. We had uh, what was the big one in the SEC? Georgia and Ole Miss.
Yes.
Did you
Yeah.
have any major observations from that? Are you
Mm.
surprised that Georgia's the new number one?
No, not after that showing against Ole Miss. I mean, that was a beatdown in that game. The Georgia that everybody had been expecting, like, is starting to emerge, and it emerged in a big way in that
Hmm.
game. Not so much. Washington, I think, should have pulled away a little bit in that Utah game. I think the actual score ended up being closer than really what was on the field. Washington just never really got it together to kind of pull away. In that one, I think we all knew or thought we knew Florida State would roll. I didn't know if it was going to be a closer game or not. So for me, it wasn't like a full chalk lineup, but for the major teams and kind of the top 10, I think it played out, about as you would expect.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. We've had so few upsets at the top. And even if you want to say some of the games were upsets, maybe like the Texas Bama game, like that was a mini upset. But we haven't had a lot of the unranked teams beating a top 10 team this year. Or even like a lower, like a 25 beating a 2. Like we've got 5, 10 and 0 teams.
Yeah, that's what I was about to exactly where I was going to go. But it is I haven't gone back and I haven't looked, but this is very late in the season to be having 5 undefeated teams at 10 and 0. I
Well,
mean,
it's
it's
never
crazy.
happened in the Power 5 that's existed for the past decade. Like when the Big
Right.
East really started to dissolve and before TCU was in the Big 12. Like if you go beyond that, in '09 we had 6, 10 and 0 teams, but 3 of them were not in Power 5s as they are
Right.
constructed now. So, I'm not sure it's ever happened to have this many power schools 10 and
Mhm.
0. It's
Yeah.
it's highly unusual. And last year at this time we had 4. So I was saying on Monday, like that's got to be due to the combination of NIL and the portal.
Yeah. Yeah. And heck, if you go back, I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, somebody's going to get an L right there. Washington, um, yeah, I mean, you could have Georgia come out clean, one of Michigan, Ohio State, FSU, and Washington. You could have 4 teams come out clean. I mean, that's crazy. It harkens back almost to something that Virginia Tech's very intimately familiar with, and that's the Sugar Bowl back in, what was that, 2005, if I'm not
2004
four
season.
four
Yes,
season.
and then the
Um,
5 Sugar Bowl, yeah.
yeah, where Auburn went undefeated and got relegated down to play Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl, and that was like a huge, huge issue, and part of the reason that we ended up, eventually moving away from the BCS like kind of style of doing things. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and I that '04 season came up in some of my research, and I basically went back to 2000 because it's harder and harder to find like the weeks when you go back that far.
Yep.
But that year there was 3 obviously that were 10 and 0. Most years it's 2 or less.
Yep.
And there's been, I think, just like I said, 2022 was 4, but that is extremely rare. That '09 season was extremely rare as well. So it's wild, man, and I would assume that might catch up over the next 2 weeks, and we
Yeah.
might see a little something. But the fact that Washington has gotten through unscathed with how many kind of close games they've played, I I still thought they would have moved up to that 4 spot because they got the win over Utah, and Florida State didn't look super impressive against Miami.
Yes. Uh, so Washington, you and I last time we talked about Washington, and I kind of flip flopped and I said, we've seen this story with like the high powered offense, and
Hmm.
not really, and then they kind of get into the playoff and get demolished. You know what other story that we've seen, and we saw it very very recently, is a team from that same conference getting in after playing a lot of close games, and that being TCU. And from it was just, when TCU got in from the big last year, it was just you everybody said they're battle tested, and that was the big thing. They've played all these close games, but they won and they're battle tested. It took them all the way to the national championship. I mean, it got them there, so it can be done. But what ended up happening, the juggernaut Georgia came in and just kind of destroyed them. So um I don't know, it'll be interesting. But they've played some, skin of their teeth type games.
Yeah, and if you look at the rest of the rankings, and this is related, I'm looking at Utah, and they are a 3-loss team. They're 5 spots behind Tennessee, who just got their doors blown off by Mizzou. In what world do you think Tennessee's better than Utah? Like I don't get that, especially when 2 of Utah's losses are to 2 top 6 teams. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like that was the biggest gripe for me.
Mhm.
Um, UNC is behind 4 3-loss teams. So they have 2 losses, but they're behind 4 3-loss teams, including Tennessee. Um, and then if you look at OK State and Kansas, just to round some things out, they dropped 8 and 9 spots respectively, but they're still in there.
Yeah.
I don't. I know Kansas lost their quarterback, but that should factor in. Like I don't think
Yeah.
Kansas should be a top 25 team at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Utah is suffering from, if you go back probably and listen to the podcast 3 weeks ago, or I think you and I were talking about our picks, and we both said the same thing. We don't really know what to do with Utah. If you remember us talking about that, and it's like, like I can't figure them out. And teams that you can't really figure out like that ended up getting screwed over in the polls,
Yeah.
because when people can't figure them out, they just put them down lower. And I think it's completely unfair given the two teams that they've lost to.
And I think a lot of times they're looking at like the quarterbacks too,
Mhm.
because Bryson Barnes, he's the pig farmer. He's not the star quarterback, and I just feel like that gets dinged more than other things. If like a team has a star quarterback, but maybe they're not that good, they stay higher. On the flip side of that is Iowa, who's not ranked in the AP poll at all,
Mhm.
but they are number 16 in the playoff rankings. And I actually think it's BS that they're not ranked in the AP poll. I'm not sure they should be 16,
Yeah.
but I believe that they should be ranked in both polls. It's crazy. That's a huge discrepancy. That's unusual.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that one as well.
Only G5 in the CFP rankings is Tulane, and they are number 24. And that's another team that's been winning a lot of games by the skin of their teeth. And there are 2 other undefeated teams in the AAC that are
Mhm.
coming right now. So you got UTSA and you got SMU, and I'm very fascinated to see how, because Memphis has 1 loss in the conference, like they're in there too. So
Yep.
that finish in the AAC and the championship game, it's going to be pretty fun. Let's get to the depth chart injury update. Stroman was out for the BC game. Saw that come down, made me a little nervous because we know that in run support, he's a valuable player. We saw Jalen Jones dealing with a shoulder injury throughout the game as well. We had guys filling in at safety. And on the depth chart, we had Jaden McDonald and Lawson basically splitting snaps at the will linebacker. And this week,
Yep.
there's an or designation between those 2 guys. And I don't think either guy was particularly impressive in this past game, but that's what's going on at that position. If you want to just talk about the accolades from last game, I'm throwing this into this segment. Kyron Drones and Dorian Strong both earned ACC Player of the Week honors at their respective positions, and it was well deserved.
Very well deserved. And yeah, the outside of the defensive line, the Hokies are all over the place in the backfield and in the linebacker positions. There is a lot of movement right now.
Yeah.
So it it didn't hurt them in this game. It wasn't it didn't impact them, but It's unsettling a little bit, like just that not. It's unsettling not to have it settled at this point, and like I guess it's
The
probably
injuries to the safeties have just been brutal this year. I mean,
yeah,
we finally get Nazir back, and now Stroman's out.
yeah,
For NC State, and we said it before BC, but like all hands on deck for this game. Like
yeah,
this is a game this is a tough team. They're not they have a good record. They might not
yeah.
be as good as their record. We'll get into
Right.
that later, but they're a tough team. And we
Hmm.
need Stroman. We need Peoples. We need everybody playing.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get into there's a lot of reasons why we need them, and you and I can and you and I can cover that here soon. So
College football Monday, I went over all the stuff I typically go over, and I didn't get a chance to get Robbie's playoff four.
mm,
So I'm going to ask him what he projects as the playoff four at
yeah.
the end of the episode. How about that, Rob?
Perfect. I'm ready to go now. I'm ready to go then. But
Okay.
we'll do it.
Pick 'em leaders. This past week, I went 8-2. The week before
Ooh.
that, you went 8-1. So,
Ooh.
no, sorry, you went 9-1.
Yeah.
So the last 2 weeks we have been bringing some heat. We're getting it together a little bit, but we are far, far behind the leader, which is some spread, 68-42. They increased his or her lead by 4 over Hokie Hustler. So now they're kind of getting out in front of everybody. Tech Triumph, 1 game behind Hokie Hustler. Good job by you three. You are first, second, and third right now. Friday Night Lights. The event at Tots is coming up on 11/17 this Friday night before the NC State game. I'm going to be there 8 to 10 with some of the other team members from Sons of Saturday. I said before, Billy can't be there, and he might be downgraded to doubtful. We're not sure. He had a rough one, I think, this past weekend down in Charlotte watching the games. But we're going to have some other team members there. I think Mike from the Hokie Hitter is going to be around. Sam's going to be around. Brett. You might get Mike McDaniel. You might get Al. There's a lot of people that could be in the house. So 8 to 10 at Tots. Please come over and say what's up. I just want to thank you for listening to the pod. You can get a sticker. You can get a pin. And if you say, I'm a listener and I would like a koozie, I will give you a koozie. I don't have very many, but if
Ooh.
you specifically ask me for one, I will give you one.
Ooh. We're coming down to the wire on the koozies. I have some. I will refill your coffers with some koozies.
But please come out and say hello on Friday night. It's going to be a blast. Game recap. We got the game started with those 2 interceptions by Dorian Strong, and it led to 10 points. Tech took it to BC in the second quarter, scoring-wise, because it was a little bit shaky in the first. 21 points in the second quarter to make it 31-7.5. Added a quick touchdown in the third to make it 38-7, and it was over. BC put up 15 points late to make it look slightly more respectable, but it really was not a close game at all. And this is such a weird thing about this season. We get blown out, and then we do a blowout ourselves. It's very bizarre. But the best part of the show, the calls.
Well, Hokies, we finally showed up on the road. Unreal performance.
I am here in the stands at Alumni Stadium. It's 38-7.
For the love of God, can we stop being that team that pulls the strings so early? I want to put 50 on them, 60, 70 on them, damn it. Is that too much to ask? Probably. Probably is too much to ask as a Hokie.
Hey, what a great game. I mean, after that Louisville game, where we just didn't seem to do anything, we come back. We have solid offense, solid defense, a great field goal kicker. Holy cow.
Defense shut down the quarterback like we needed to. They couldn't do anything else on the field.
You know what? I can't complain. 48 is great. 48 is fantastic. I think it's been since what? At least 21. I know it sure as heck won't last year.
The only heartbreak was watching, Grant Wells run down the sideline. And, man, we're rooting for him. He's a Hokie, and just sucked to watch him drop that right there at the end.
I don't really have much to say other than that shit was awesome. That made me happy. And way to go, Hokies. I'm proud of y'all.
Just visited Treehouse Brewing.
Did I mention I made chili today? Yep, made chili, and I put Hokie beer in the chili.
Next week, I am salivating on taking on NC State and that Brennan Armstrong-led offense.
Let's go win these next 2. Let's get to 7 wins. Let's go bowling.
I'm on Virginia Tech's greatest drug right now. Hope. PM. Peace.
Great calls as always. I love the one. Did I mention I made chili today? Just gonna
Yes, I
just
mentioned.
throw that in there.
Somebody wanted to get to 50. You know, there is a way to get to 50, and that is to not let the ball shoot out into the other team's end zone for a touchback.
Yeah.
That is one key way. I was in so much pain watching that. I was just like, oh.
I think
That was like
everybody
the only
was,
black
man.
mark in the game, really. Like that was just, yeah, that was tough.
And I know some people were kind of like making fun of Grant. I just felt bad for him
I know.
because like he was so close. And if it just like bounces slightly different, it just goes out of bounds.
Goes
And
out
we
of
get the
bounds.
ball down there. As it stands, he got us 60 yards, which got us to 600 yards of offense.
That's right.
which is a nice round number. And so we'll give him credit for that. But yeah, that was the only black eye in the game was that.
Yeah.
But the caller was correct. The last time we had 48 points was 2021 against Duke. And that is such a forgotten game. Every time I see that, like when I go back through some stats, I'm like, wait, when was that? It's because it was Fuente's last game. Like we knew he was getting fired, but he wasn't fired yet. And then we like blew up all over a terrible Duke team because, you know, they hired a new coach right after that too.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, that is the last time we scored that many. If we had to go over 48, it might have been the UNC game. Remember that UNC game in 17? We won like 59-7 or something.
Yeah. I didn't look up. You're so much better at finding these types of things, but if I'm not mistaken, 35 unanswered points in this game. That's got to be like up there, you know, for us.
Would that be the Belk Bowl?
I think probably. But that's crazy. 35 unanswered is
That
a
really is
testament to both
crazy.
the offense and the defense in order to put that out on the field.
While I'm doing the ad read, Rob, why don't you tell me, why don't you think of your story of the game?
Ooh, okay.
Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence is brought to you by McCoy's Auto Repair in Radford, Virginia. Who doesn't love supporting a family-owned and operated business? That's what you get with McCoy's. They started in 1980. They've been around for over 40 years. They do all your major and minor repairs, oil changes, state inspections, engine transmissions rebuilds or repairs, diesel work, fleet service, anything. They also sell any branded tires that's perfect for this upcoming winter. Go to McCoy's and get your tires, and they even have that optional pickup and drop-off service, which is so clutch if you just can't get to the shop with work. So head to McCoy's Auto Repair for all your vehicle maintenance needs, or give them a call, 540-639-2933. If you're watching on YouTube, the number is right on the screen, and you can also find them on Facebook. Just like that old Hokie buddy of yours, McCoy's is a name you can trust. And I also wanted to mention, Rob, this weekend when I'm down at the game, I might get a chance to meet the proprietors of McCoy's because they tailgate very close to the stadium. So on my way, I'm going to try to stop by and say hello to our wonderful sponsors.
Say hello for me. That's awesome. That is that's really cool.
So story of the game.
Story of the game. I was going to jokingly say we put the ball on the ground 5 times, but thankfully we only lost it twice. No, I'm just kidding. And there were a lot of balls that were put on the ground, but we got them all back. 600 yards. I got to go with that. That's a number for Virginia Tech. We do not eclipse very often. That is not. And in particular, we don't eclipse it against Power 5 teams. So I think the 600 yards, and it was relatively spread around, right? I know Tootin had, a nice day, 76 yards, but it was a mix of passing. It was a mix of rushing. It was a mixing of different people rushing the ball. It was, I know Felton had 100 yards, but I think 600 yards and spread kind of all throughout facets of the offense is my story of the game.
My story was the dominant defense after BC's first score. Because despite there not being a lot of guys who stood out on the stat sheet, the defense played phenomenally well. And I thought the offense was super efficient. And so let's go to the offense. We gave you some of the overall numbers already, but the run game was really clicking early in this game, particularly with Kyron. 363 yards on the ground as a team. Tootin had 3 touchdowns. Kyron went for 135. Malachi had that nice 35-yard TD run when when the game was kind of in hand, but I absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. He's got so much ability.
I know.
It's just crazy that he's our 1B right now.
Which is is wild. He'd be starting for plenty of other kind of Power 5 teams, which is a little bit a rarity for Virginia Tech to have kind of a embarrassment, if you will, of riches at running back, which is awesome in these days, obviously.
Overall, Drones was awesome. 70% completion, 217 rating, 93 QBR, 135 rushes. Those are all top marks for him for the year. And I
Yep.
said as much on Monday. 6.8 yards per attempt on the ground. He was getting big chunks in the run game. There was that one that he did like a fake toss and then ran. And
Yeah.
Sam said, that's the first time that play worked all year. Well, it was a great
Yeah.
time for it to work.
Yep. It was. The run game was amazing. Two things come to mind. We were struggling in the red zone. And in the red zone, we had that nice pass out to the flat to Lane for that touchdown. And then Tootin on the rush, just absolutely bulldozing his way through bodies for that one touchdown. I mean, he should have been taken down 4 yards short of the goal line and somehow came out on the other end of that pile on his feet. And I was blown away.
That was great. And that was one of our 5 trips to the red zone, and we had 4 touchdowns on those 5 trips. So we increased our TD percentage in the red zones. 8 of our first 10 drives went for scores in the game. It was just amazing. And if you go back to Drones for a second, he had over 215 yards passing and over 130 yards rushing. There are 2 quarterbacks who've done that since 1987. One is
Really?
Drones, and one is Marcus Vick. Not Michael Vick,
Really?
Marcus Vick, because Michael never put up the passing numbers in most of the time. I mean, he could flick
Yes.
it like anybody, but it just wasn't necessary. They they
Right.
were running more or less an option offense. So
Yep.
it was either throw it deep to Andre Davis for once or twice a game, and then pitch it every other play or run it himself. So yeah, Marcus Vick and Drones, only 2 players to have those 2 totals in the air and on the ground in the last 30 some years. So
Wow.
pretty phenomenal. 600 yards is obviously the most of the Brent Pry era, Robbie's favorite phrase. And you said the thing about us not doing that against the Power 5. That's dead on, because the last time we had 600 was against ODU in 2018 when we lost, and
Man.
against ECU in 2017. And so neither of those are Power 5 teams. And those are the 2 stats I'd written down. Now I don't know when the last time we did it against a Power 5 team was. But Bill Roth had tweeted out it was the most yards in a road conference game since 1993.
Wow. I mean, that's going back, 30 years we're talking.
30 years on the nose. Yep.
That's crazy. Yeah, it was nice. 7 for 15 on 3rd down. We completed all of our 4th down conversions. All the stats check out. Everything's coming out Millhouse. Coming up Millhouse here. So, it was a great day.
It was a great day. And if you look at the overall stats on the season now, Virginia Tech is putting up 411 yards per game in conference and 6 yards per play. And if you were to do that all year, expand your conference play into the Purdue game and the Marshall game and whatnot, we'd be a top 50 offense this year.
Yeah.
And that's what we can hope for next year going forward. If we put this same offense on the field and put the vast majority of these players back out on the field, filling a few holes from the portal, it could be really special. And in conference play, I did want to say that Drones has 10 total touchdowns and just 1 pick. His passer rating is also around 150 in conference. And so that's 6 games. That's nothing to sneeze at. And the 2 losses, he's 4-2 as a starter in the ACC. The 2 losses are to 2 top 10 teams. I know they weren't very pretty games, but they were the top 10 teams. So it's pretty remarkable what he's been able to do in such a short time.
And he's doing it also without Ali Jennings as well. I mean, I know we haven't talked about that name in a long time, but you have to imagine that it would be if anything, a little bit better, right? Like, if
Mhm.
not materially better, just given his size and athleticism and what we saw, just even not to mention last year when we saw a lot of it, but this year, in seeing what he could do. So it's pretty incredible.
Tootin is 7th in the ACC in both yards from scrimmage per game and in touchdowns. He's got 9 touchdowns on the year. So he's right up there with the best of them in the ACC. So it's great all-around performance from the offense. Let's flip over to the defense. They did
Yeah.
a great job of holding Castellanos in check. That is what we talked about before the game. It was more or less the only guy you really had to worry about once we knew Robichaud was out.
Yep.
And he only had 156 total yards, which is very low for him. He had the 2 interceptions, just 124 yards rushing for BC, a team that was averaging over 200 a game coming
Mhm.
into the game, about half of what they normally put up almost, and just 262 total yards allowed. That's tied with Wake Forest for our second fewest. Obviously, Syracuse was the fewest yards allowed on the year, but it was a shutdown defense. And it's funny because when you were going through the stats, did you have the same reaction as me of like, I'm not seeing like the guy with the real like standout performance other than maybe Dorian.
No, that's it. And because I was going back, I always go through, kind of look at the stats, throw some names out there, rewatch kind of highlights, make sure I'm like capturing everything. And we didn't have a sack in the game that I could find. We had 2 tackles for a loss in the game. Um, it was, it's a bizarre, to have this kind of defensive performance in that game. We held Castellanos to 46 yards on the ground, which I didn't look at his stats on the year, has to be among the lowest that he's produced all season. And it was just, and honestly, I think part of that is also BC only got to run, I think, 56 plays in total. Virginia Tech, on the other hand, had 72 plays in the game. And I think that had a lot to do with it. So we obviously found ourselves with the ball a lot more, and maybe, more snaps on their side, and we see ourselves putting up but I was struggling to figure out how it's possible the stats ended up the way that they were.
Yeah, you were right on with the play numbers, and I noticed that like
Mhm.
we had 48 tackles on the
Mhm.
game, and they had like, or sorry, yeah, that's right, because
Yeah.
they were on the field so few, like there wasn't enough tackles to go around,
Yeah,
basically.
they had like they had 81 tackles, I think, in the game, and we had something
Right.
like, yeah, it was crazy because Virginia Tech had the ball the whole time. So it was wild.
Yeah, and there was a lot of young guys in the game. Like Caleb Woodson actually led us in tackles with 6. Canteen played a very good game. He had 5, and he's been good against the run this year when we've needed him. 2 pass breakups for Dante Lovett, and I just wanted to mention that because
Yep.
he's a true freshman who could factor in big for us down the line, and it was good to see him out there making some plays. On special teams, we had Jalen Lane's almost TD,
I know.
but the cool thing about that was he got the touchdown on that drive anyway. So,
Yes, and it still happened.
yeah,
Yeah, it would have been. It made it even cooler that he could still get the touchdown for sure.
yeah. John Love had a nice field goal kick, made a 47-yarder in that one. The only bad part about the special teams I thought was that what was going on with the 2 kicks out of bounds? Was it windy or something? Like what that seemed weird to me.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if when that happens, are people getting cute with where they're trying to kick it to, right? And like they're trying to aim at like one, somebody versus, or one side of the field versus the other, and they just get too cute, or is it a shank, or what's going on there? I have no clue.
Yeah, that was the only real downside, that and the Wells fumble in the game. As far as big picture takeaways, did you have anything that after watching this game, just you take in the season, you take in that game? What give me a takeaway?
um, a very nice complementary football game. A complementary between the offense and the defense, and complementary between the offense and the defense, and the run game and the pass game. That's it. Like it looked nice and it looked clean. And it left me feeling really rosy and happy at the end of it.
I mean, it was surprising the way we
Mhm.
were able to just move the ball so easily, but it was also super satisfying after that Louisville game, which was so dreadful. And then you see UVA go out on Thursday night and almost beat Louisville. And then
Mhm.
you're feeling even worse about yourself. At least I was.
Yep.
And the coaches switched up the routine at the hotel. At least that's the word. And who knows if it had any effect, but they got them up early and were banging pots and pans or whatever in the hallway. I don't know, but it worked. And this team is just, it's a little weird. You're getting the inconsistency week in and week out. You get good O and then bad O, good D and then bad D. And that inconsistency it's a symptom of youth. It's a
Yep.
symptom of being outmanned at key positions.
Mhm.
And the fact that we're able to put these kind of weaker teams in the ACC in a locker, like we're not
Mhm.
just beating them.
Yeah.
Like we're giving them a swirly. Like and it's nice. And it's to the point that we've got 5 wins. And
Yeah.
I know, like, if you look at the standings of the ACC, like 4 of our wins are the teams that are like at the very bottom. But like, whatever, man.
Well, that's what
Like,
you're supposed to do.
right. Those are
And
on our schedule, and we're whipping their butts. And so now we still have a shot somehow at this ACC title game.
I mean,
Do you even want me to talk? I posted the clip on our Instagram today about what needs to happen. And it's extremely simple. It takes 1 second to say. We need to win out. UNC needs to win out, and Louisville needs to lose to Miami. And that's it. Louisville only has 1 conference game left because they play Kentucky at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so that's what needs to happen. And it's like 5 different things. It's possible.
Yeah. So my daughter has a beta fish. Okay. And this beta fish up in her room got like bloat or something, or got like something. This thing has been dying for like 3.5 weeks. It won't eat. It won't do anything. It's laying on its side, like in the fish tank. And my wife's like, we got to do something. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to like smash it with a mallet? And like, and I'm like, we're going to flush it down the toilet. Like, how is that any better? At least now it's in like a nice fish tank. It's clean. We've cleaned it 100 times. We're like putting stuff in there. Virginia Tech, winning the ACC is like, my daughter's beta fish bell up in her room. It will not die. That's what all the other teams are thinking about. That's how I.
That's classic, man. Yeah, it's we are a fish with bloat.
Yes, with bloat.
Whatever you call it.
I'm telling
That's
you.
a good way to describe it. People have been posting the meme of like, I guess it's a scene from Sonic. I haven't seen the new movie, but it's like, how are you not dead yet? And it says like, Virginia Tech over Sonic.
Yeah, that's it. And I haven't even seen that meme. It's just like that meme. It just comes to mind is Belle, the male beta fish up in my daughter's room that's been dying for 3. It's probably been 4 weeks. It's unbelievable. Every time I check in there, I'm like,
but you can tell that it's still alive.
Yeah, you can see it breathing, like, and it'll like move if you like hit the tank and stuff. It'll move like around, but then it like immediately just like lays on its side at the bottom of the tank.
Does she know that it's dying?
Yeah, but it's been so long. It's like, it's there's not going to be any emotion. Like, she's probably going to be like relieved. Like, and she's already got a new fish picked out, like at the store. Like,
all right, let's take a quick beer break to calm ourselves down from that hilarious story. And I'm going to do a quick ad read, and then I want to ask you what you're drinking, Rob, if anything.
Yeah.
The 2 Deep Hokies Under the Influence podcast is brought to you by Roback. You guys know Roback. They're the performance activewear that has brought you the Virginia Tech themed polos and quarter zip with the little Virginias on it. That's the Commonwealth and the Berg. They're both available on roback.com. Right now, they're offering our listeners 20% off their first order using code 2DEEPVT, all one word. But they have hoodies, tees, the quarter zips, shorts, joggers, and of course, their wide selection of polos. They have tons and tons of different polos. And if you are getting ready for Christmas and you might have already used your code, tell your wife to do the order. Tell your mom to do the order. They can all use code 2DVT and put in that Roback order. So go to their site and load up your cart. Use our code Roback Crave Activity. Are you having anything over there tonight, Rob?
I am having, it is the Citrus Cacao IPA. It is not cocoa. Cacao. So CACAO. I'm on a website right now. It's a chocolatiers website discussing what the difference is between cocoa and cacao. And
How
let's just
cool you
say,
sound when you say it.
yeah, exactly. Blend citrus flavors with the mellow sweetness of cacao fruit juice. So I don't know what cacao is, but it's pretty delicious. And it's a hazy IPA, and I'm enjoying it. It is Athletic Brewing Company, a non-alcoholic beer. So there you go. Yeah, what do you got?
I am drinking Zed's. This is called the Importanter IPA. And Zed's is a local brewery right in my town here in New Jersey. And I go there from time to time. And I just love the fact that our town has a little brewery because it really isn't very big. Like you can only get the beer there. It's a very small place, but it's right near our main street, and there's pizza places close by. You go grab a slice and head over to the bar. It's great. It's a great little spot, and this is one of the best IPAs they've put out. It's 6.4% alcohol. It's kind of a cross between a hazy and like a traditional, and it's not too bitter. It's not too sweet. But it's phenomenal. And their slogan is approachable craft beer. And I would say that this is approachable. This is from Zed's Beer, Marlton, New Jersey, the Importanter IPA. I would recommend it if you're ever in my town. I live right near Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which most people are familiar with.
Okay.
Oh, I also wanted to point out this hat I've got on.
Ooh.
For the real dedicated diehards. You'll notice this is a Key Play trucker hat. Limited edition from, I don't know, 2014 or something like that. Got it way back. I still have my Key Play t-shirt that they put out, the one with like the big key on it. I used to, and they were the originals that did the horse on a treadmill.
Yes. Yeah. The horse on the treadmill video, which they need to bring back to the commercials immediately.
Underwater dog on a treadmill.
Yes. And just so everybody, because I know people are really interested in this, linguistically, the cacao and cocoa are entirely interchangeable, but due to the more botanic connection of cacao, it's much more healthy and natural connotation as it's used. Cocoa, on the other hand, thanks to its historical usage in Africa and Asia, where mostly low quality cacao is grown and has cheaper, less healthy reputation. Same thing, evidently.
That is fascinating. I learned something today.
Yeah, everybody will forget about that right about now.
All right, NC State, 11-18, 3:30 p.m. on ACC Network. We got that 3:30 p.m. start. I love it. It's perfect for tailgating. Going to be over in the Litton Reeves lot if you want to stop by. NC State is 7-3 this year. They have fallen a little bit in terms of their projected FPI and where they are now. They're coming in at 42. VT's 50th after last week. Because we beat a 6-3 Boston College team, even though they don't have a strong FPI, it kind of boosted us up a bit. And Dave Doran is still the coach down there. 79-57 over 11 seasons. He's been there 11 years.
That is incredible. Holy cow.
They beat us by 1 point last year. You'll probably remember that. We had a lead thanks to a long Caleb Smith touchdown.
Yeah.
And before that game, though, where we lost by 1, we hadn't lost to them since 2004, a game that I attended as a student. That was also a 1-point loss. Yeah. So it's kind of weird. Like we normally play NC State pretty tough, and we usually beat them.
Yeah.
They lost a lot off of last year's roster. They've been doing it with defense this year. I kind of called them like the ACC versions of Iowa for this year. Like that's really how they've been playing. And Tony Gibson is still their defensive coordinator. I've always thought of Tony Gibson as a very average DC. Like when he was with West Virginia, his defenses were never lights out. And at NC State, he had a little bit better talent, but they were still like kind of never quite lived up to the expectations. This year, they're exceeding expectations.
Yeah, they always have good skill talent on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's usually pretty consistent. This year, they have some very good skill talent on the defensive side of the ball. And I think I would say, I've always thought of him as an average kind of DC, but this year they are playing pretty lights out. Do you want to start with that side of the ball, or you want to hop? What do you want to do? Offense, defense?
Let's save the better stuff for a
Okay.
little bit later. Let's talk about Robert and the OC that was brought in.
Yep.
You'll remember that he was the OC at UVA a couple years
Mhm.
back when Brennan Armstrong was there. Anai goes up to Syracuse, Schrader improves, and then NC State hire. I don't know why he's moving around so much, but now Anai is down at NC State, and he brought his boy in, Brennan Armstrong, down to be the starting quarterback this year. Seemed kind of strange to me because MJ Morris had come in as a freshman last year and played really well. I never expected all the twists and turns this has taken so far this
Been a
year
nightmare.
because Brennan Armstrong started the year as their quarterback. After about 5 games, the offense just was struggling so bad. They said, "Screw it, we're not going to redshirt Morris. We're gonna play him." And they actually went 3-1 over that stretch. It wasn't necessarily because Morris was playing amazing, but they went 3-1. And then we get the news last week that Morris is shutting it down. He's redshirting, and whenever that happens, it feels like he's going to transfer.
Yes. And he transferred. So we are back.
Was that legit? Like, do you think he's in the portal?
I think I'm pretty sure he's in the portal.
He's going to be.
Going to be. Yes. And Brennan Armstrong is I'm almost certain going to be, the starter for the game. So it is a bit of a dumpster fire. Let's put it that way. And the way that things have played out thus far.
I had a little bit of commentary with, I think it was Sam, just about how it seems strange to me that this team, NC State, at the time of MJ saying he was going to redshirt, which we know what that means, but they were still in contention for the ACC title game. It is so weird to me that that's the way it went down. And whatever, Brennan Armstrong started the last game. He's going to start this game. Despite being benched, he played pretty well last week. He put up a 98 QBR, third highest PFF grade in the country during last week's games. But his passer rating on the year is still down around 116, 115, and a 57 QBR, which is, I think, around where Drones is at. A first-year starter, not the third or fourth year senior, probably a fifth-year senior in his third or fourth year starting. So I don't know why Brennan Armstrong declined so much last year at UVA and has continued that decline this year, but he's just not a very good quarterback.
Yes. And before I'll keep going, but I wanted to clarify. So Eddie Morris, MJ's father, told the news agency last night that he plans on staying at NC State and will not be pursuing a transfer in the offseason. So that tells me he'll be transferring like immediately in the offseason. So there's no doubt. I don't know why Armstrong has been struggling so much, but it has not been great. To go with, barely a little bit over 1,000 yards. He's got 400 yards, I think, on the ground and 4 more touchdowns. But needless to say, under center, they're struggling. Their offensive line is not very good, which is not helping him. And they're letting defenses cause some havoc. They've given up like 20 sacks and almost 70, I think, tackles for a loss on the season, something like that. And it's tough. It's bad under center. They have running back by committee right now, 3 running backs. They really are kind of probably down to 2 at this point that they're using. And they have Dilbert Mims, who's like their goal line running back. But it's tough. And the wide receiving talent is not very good either. They have, maybe one good wide receiver, and that's really it. So,
and he's the freshman.
Yes,
it's Concepcion, and without him coming in this year, like, I don't know where they'd be at in this receiving core. And he's very dynamic. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. He's under 200 pounds, under 6 foot, but he's got 50 receptions, 573 yards, and 6 touchdowns. They've run him quite a bit as well. So he's a receiver and he's a rusher, because you said it's a committee in the backfield, because Houston shut it down at the beginning of the year. So you had their starting running back shut it down earlier in the season. You have their starting quarterback, at least for the last few games, shut it down.
Yes.
2/3 of the way through the season. Yeah. Like, this is not the tea leaves I'm reading don't look so freaking good for NC State. And despite all of it, they have a 7-3 record. So good on them. They're managing to get it done. even though they're 113th in yards per play on offense, 113th, just about 5 yards per play, 84th in scoring offense. And as you mentioned about the tackles for loss, they're 111th in tackles for loss allowed per game. So teams are getting in their backfield. They're taking the skill talent on the offensive side of the ball that outside of Concepcion, it's not good. I really hope that his name is Conception and not Concepcion.
Yeah.
Kevin
Like,
Conception.
We're gonna inception that concept of
Kevin Conception with the receptions.
Yeah, it's Inception. The movie is a wonderful movie. So yes, it is it's a bit of a mess. It almost kind of, it's reminiscent of the offense kind of wiping their hands clean and being like, all right, let's see how many more games the defense can win for us. They're struggling.
And that's because they're 20th in total defense.
Yeah.
I said when we were doing our other segment, we were 21st. They are one spot ahead of us in terms of total defense.
Mm-hmm.
But they've played a similar but easier schedule, if you ask me. It's hard to say where the offense is tougher or not, but it's a similar schedule. 29th in yards per play on defense, 41st in tackles for loss per game, 16th in sacks per game. So they're getting in the backfield. They've got a good defensive line. We saw when we were doing our summer previews, we talked about Van and Clark and Jackson and how they're bringing all those guys back. And they've added Hibbler as a playmaker this year too. What's standing out to you on that line, on that defense?
A few things. At a macro level, this is like a top 8 defense if you throw out 2 games. They completely brain farted against Notre Dame and gave up 45, and then against Marshall, and they gave up like 40.
Oh yeah, the Marshall game was
41.
a shootout.
Yeah, it was another shootout. Outside of those games, if you knock those 2 out, this is probably like a top 8 defense in the country. Just, so we're clear outside. And I know you could do that with any team, but it is 2 very glaring. They gave up 6 to Wake Forest. They gave up 6 to Miami. They gave up 17 to Clemson and 24 to Duke. That's their last 4 games and what this defense has done. So it's a 3-3-5. Stingy, very stingy against the run. So where I focus at most is their 2 linebackers, Peyton Wilson and Jalen Scott. They have been monsters for them. And they got 2 really good defensive ends in Van and Jackson. And those 4, I think, are really kind of where I focus in at their ability to stop the run, which they've done a very good job at this season.
I thought they were going to struggle more in the linebacker spot with Drake Thomas going to the NFL because he did so much for this team. He had 23 hurries last year for NC State, just preposterous numbers. I really thought they were going to be hurting because of him. But Peyton Wilson, he was good before. He's taken a step forward. 12 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 6 pass breakups as a linebacker, 9 more hurries, 2 interceptions, 112 tackles. He's putting up like 11 tackles per game. Crazy motor. And Scott, the other linebacker, is second on the team in tackles. So you're dead on. You're looking at those linebackers.
Video game numbers for Wilson. Those are like video game numbers.
Yeah,
That's
they're
absolutely
crazy. The safeties, Brown and Boykin, both have 2 interceptions apiece. I mean, there's like 7 guys that have 2 interceptions on this team. There's so many interceptions.
They were so stingy up front, and then all of a sudden, after that Marshall game, when they gave up a bunch of points, the secondary just like turned it on. So they have 7 interceptions in the last 4 games in the secondary. They have just like that at the beginning of the year was a little bit of a liability for them, as shown in the Notre Dame game and then the Marshall game. And then all of a sudden it like clicked for them. And now it's running on all cylinders in that secondary.
And I don't really know what the weaker part of the defense is. Because if you look at the corners to go with those safeties, Battle, White, Kennedy, a lot of those guys have been playing there for a while. They're veterans. There's so many juniors and seniors on this defense. They have 47 hurries as a team. That is an insane amount of hurries. Like maybe the NC State stat keeper is just like inflating their stuff because Drake Thomas had 23 hurries last year. But whatever, man. They're putting up hurries and they're putting up sacks. and you can't skew the sacks. So
you and I always complain about like, what does it actually a hurry mean?
Right.
And like we'll come away from a game and be like, yeah, there's 2 hurries. And you're like, you're telling me the quarterback got hurried twice in this game, like felt like pressure and had to escape the pocket, et cetera. There's no way. And I think the NC State stat guy was listening to us and was like, all right, we're going to fix this now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a formidable unit, and I'm not exactly sure the best way for us to attack it. I think we just do what we do best and see if it leads to points. And that would be the option run game, getting Kyron involved in that way early, being careful with how many times you pass the football, because there is a sweet spot. Chris Coleman talked a little bit about this. Like, you get too many pass attempts, then you know the running game's not working well enough. So, and you're not sticking with it. So keep it around that 21 to 25 pass attempts, run the football, and just go at this team at home and see what you can do. But it's going to be a challenge. Like, it really is.
I think we have a really distinct advantage here using something that you just said, the read option game. If we can really hone in the read option on this in this game and freeze the linebackers, because it's a 3-3-5, right? Like, if we can use that to our advantage and use the option to freeze the linebacker where they don't know if it's a hold or it's a give, and you're basically watching their hips on what they're going to do and whether they're going to take the running back or whether they're going to go for it. I think that could be it could be useful in this game. So I'm hopeful that that's something we're able to execute on and works for us.
Yeah, there's going to have to be misdirection and a bunch of other things to keep them off balance, to give our offensive line a chance. Like, this is a giant test for our offensive line in this game. And they didn't do so hot the last time they were tested against Louisville. And this defense, it's close. It's close to that. It might be as good as that Louisville defense. It's very good. Their special teams, this is something important to note. They have an excellent kick returner. They have an excellent punt returner, and they're not the same guy. Like, they have a top 6 in the country kickoff guy in Julian Gray and a top 12 in the country punt return guy in Jalen Coit. So this is ACC Iowa. Special teams, defense, very bad offense. I would assume this game is going to be low scoring, although I might have assumed that last week too. so I don't know, but they lost key pieces off that defense, but they replaced them, and it's arguably better than the defense they had last year.
Yep, I would agree with that. But I think that's I said in my notes, I think the first team, whether they eclipse it or not, I think the first team to 17 wins in this game.
Okay.
So,
it doesn't have to stay at 17.
It doesn't have to, but like, if you get to 17, I think you probably can feel like you got this game in the bag. I think it's going to be low scoring. It just sets up that way, and yes, because of their defense, but also because of their offense. And it's been really kind of putrid. And I think it also sets up well for what we've been doing on defense.
In our calls, Hokie Hack said something. He's salivating at getting after Brendan Armstrong. And that could be a key in the sense that we can't go length of the field all game in this game. We need a turnover deep in territory. We need a scoop and score. We need a pick 6. Yeah. And Armstrong is a tremendous runner. We know that he does that well. So make sure you're hitting him. Try to knock the ball out, because we're going to need turnovers, and I'm not sure how much this team's going to pass the ball. Yeah. And that is going to be the key, I think, to a victory. We need a turnover. We need a big special teams play, win on the margins, that field position, all those things. That's what it's going to take to win this one. We are 2.5-point favorites.
Wow.
Which it was a little bit smaller than that. And money, again, came in on VT this week. Do you think, so we talked about the games against the weaker teams. They've been blowouts in our favor. Tougher teams, blowout, not in our favor.
The other way.
Do you think this is going to be the in-betweener? Are we finally going to get an in-between in this game?
Well, if I say yes, then we're screwed. I think, I really think we should. I mean, this is a very poor offense as it's constructed right now. And for a lot of reasons, and the offensive line being as bad as it is without a really threatening running back, does not lead to good things. Some of the teams that have had success against us that do not have great offenses generally did not have as poor of an offensive line as what we're looking at here, because that's really where things can either break down a lot, or if the offensive line is able to make some holes and like make some breathing room, then you may not have a great rushing attack, but you can have a good day.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Like you can find a way to like put together a good day that way. When you have a really poor offensive line, it could be tough, and they do not have a stud running back of the two that are left.
Yeah, and they don't have a Jalen Lane or a Felton or a Tootin and a Malachi. Like that's the thing, is our offenses are actually kind of similar, except for we have like 4 guys we can count on, and I like drones a lot better than either of their 2 quarterbacks. And
Yeah.
so you look at this team, last week was actually really good prep, because what BC likes to do on offense is essentially what NC State has been forced into trying to do, because they're just having such a hard time passing the football.
Mhm.
And the best part about it is this offensive line is way worse than the BC offensive line.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't end this game with 0 sacks. we should, but like, it's like when you play an option team and then
Yeah.
you have another option team. It's like, well, thank God we played them the week before, because now we're prepped. That's kind of
Yep.
what this is like. Like we just played a very similar style of offense defensively.
Yep.
On the flip side, this defense is way better than BC, and it's
Yes.
similar to Louisville in that regard. And we're going to have to bring our A game, unlike what we did 2 weeks ago.
I'll be very interested to see what we do in this game. Watching what we did against Louisville and watching and really not having much success at all. I'll be very interested to see how. I said I would be very interested to see what we would script against Louisville, and it was not very good, right? And now here's kind of like the second try. Okay, guys, here is another very talented defense. What are we going to put out there? So I am nervous, but I'm like excited a little bit to see if we can actually put something out there that's productive.
Yeah, it's at home. It's a huge game. The focus should be a little bit better than on the road in Louisville, and we can lock up bowl eligibility, and that should be absolutely being talked about. Like, what a massive step that would be for this team after last year. And we've been good at home with drones as the starter. So I feel pretty good going into the game. I think it's going to be a close one throughout, probably a sweat until the final moments, could be on the leg of a kicker. But get some turnovers, get a play on special teams, and let's win the damn thing.
Yep, I agree.
Let's get to our picks, and then we'll get your playoff 4. App State at JMU. This is game day. Game day is going to be at JMU. I'm going to be at JMU Thursday night, because we were planning to break up the drive, see some old friends at JMU, because my wife went there.
Nice.
And now we might try to hit up the quad and just see what's going on, because I know McAfee's recording and a handful of other things are going on. So that'll be fun. But it's an 11.5 point spread. JMU's the favorite. App's been playing better lately, though.
They have been. I'm gonna go with JMU. This is a big game between these two teams. A big game, and it has been for years. Goes back almost like a decade of these teams, as they've both gotten better over the years of trading punches with each other. So it is a big matchup. But I'm going to go with JMU.
JMU has been just beating the crap out of everyone. And I feel like it's a huge game. And I think there's distractions, a lot of distractions on campus, a lot of hype, a lot of pressure. I'm going to take App to cover. I don't know if they'll win the game, but I'm going to take them to cover 11.5.
All right.
Georgia at Tennessee. Tennessee, 10.5 point underdogs at home. Georgia coming off the big win. Tennessee coming off the big loss. Is this a bounce back spot for the Vols?
No, I think this is the Georgia. Georgia is starting to activate, scary mode, and I think they're going to keep they're not going to turn it off at this point. You don't turn it off with 2 games left in the season and you're trying to make a statement to go get the number 1, spot in the nation for the playoff. This is not when you start to lose focus. This is when you really start turning up the heat, and I think they continue it.
Yeah, and I don't think Tennessee's very good. Like
Right.
I really don't think they should have been. I think they were 1-point underdogs against Mizzou, or maybe 1-point favorites. Either way, they got their butts kicked. Georgia's a lot better than Mizzou. I'm not sure Ole Miss was a huge game for Georgia in some of the ways they view it. So I think they're going to go down to Tennessee and whip some butt. Florida at Mizzou. Mizzou 11.5-point favorites against Florida. I'll go first. I'm going to take Mizzou. They're at home.
Yeah, that's who I have as well.
All right. Next game, Oregon at Arizona State. Arizona State has been improved. They've been playing better. Not so much when they played Utah, but they have been playing better in general. It's 22.5. I'm going to take the Sun Devils to cover.
Oh, yeah, that's a big spread. Oregon and Utah do have something very much in common. It's those defenses, and but I'm going to go with ASU as well. That spread is just gigantic.
It's very big when you go down. Playing in the desert, and we've talked about this many times. I've been better about picking Arizona games because I have a better feel for that team. They kind of have an identity. I don't know what exactly is going on with Arizona State. I just know that they've been managing to keep it close with some better teams this year other than Utah.
Right.
Texas at Iowa State. Pick this one off the sheet because this is a dangerous game for Texas.
Yes.
8.5-point spread, not very large. I think Ewers is back, but Brooks is out now for the year with a torn ACL. Matt Campbell's a good coach. What are you doing here, Rob?
It's at Iowa State. I'm going to go with Iowa State in this game.
I think this is Iowa State's spot. I don't know if they'll pull off the victory, but I think it's their spot to cover, and that's going to do it for picks. Rob, I want you to give me your playoff 4.
My playoff 4 is, now that I'm second guessing it, I'm going to go with.
And I'll say this too. Like
I don't have to do them in order, right? I'll just pick 4.
Well, you can do whatever you want. My goal with the playoff 4 was to project what it's going to be, not who I think is best. What I think the committee is going to select as the best 4 teams at the end of the year.
Well, that's a problem because you could see. So you could see like Ohio's. The script is setting up such that you could have a 1-loss Big Ten team get the 4 spot.
I hope not.
I'm just telling you that it's setting up.
I know.
So I'm going to disregard that possibility because we can't allow that to happen in this world. So I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Michigan at 1. Because they would have to beat Ohio State, and that is going to be a better win than any of Georgia's wins. I will go Georgia 2. I will go FSU 3, and then I'm going to go. Well, no, I'm going to go Washington 3 and FSU 4.
Okay,
is how I think it's going to shake out at the end of the year.
Because you're predicting Washington run the table, beat Oregon.
Yes.
And FSU doesn't have a game like that.
Correct.
Left. I mean, they might get that Louisville game. If Louisville stays undefeated, that'll be a top 10 game. Yeah. But I still think that would be, I think you'd probably be right on there if that happens.
Michigan would have the best win. Georgia would have its SEC kind of clout getting.
And that's the thing. And Georgia would have to beat a 1-loss Bama, which is a good win.
Yeah.
And they've beaten a top 10 Ole Miss. Ole Miss dropped a couple spots, but you get my point. Like,
yes,
I don't think Ole Miss is good, but they have, very few losses. And so,
yeah.
And they're the 2-time defending champs. I think if they both go undefeated, I feel like they're going to put Georgia 1. I could be wrong, but I had Georgia 1, I had Michigan 2, Florida State 3, and I had Oregon at 4 because I think Oregon's going to run the table and beat Washington in the title game.
Mm-hmm.
And that would mean Texas and Oklahoma. Well, not Oklahoma's done anyway, but it would mean a one-loss Texas potentially would get left out. I feel like Texas is going to lose a game.
Yes.
Like I don't know where it's coming, but I feel like they're going to lose a game.
And I guess your pick makes sense in the recency bias because Georgia will have come off of what will be perceived as a better SEC national or SEC win in the championship game than whoever. I don't even know who's coming from the other side that Michigan's going to be playing in
Yes.
the Big Ten championship game. But
if Ohio State wins out, though, they could be number 1 because they have the Notre Dame win, and they'll have the Penn State and the Michigan win, and the Iowa win in the championship game. But if Michigan goes, it's really they only have a 2-game season and then Iowa, and so I think Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Alabama would be the committee might perceive that better and put Georgia in over Michigan at the top spot. But this will all play out. But so slight differences. You have Washington and I have Oregon, and otherwise we had the same teams.
One other piece is, and Michigan has curb stomped everybody, and Georgia has had 3 games where it played with its food, and like we're kind of close. Nobody has been close really with Michigan, and that's for what it's worth. Anyway,
it's very true, but is Mizzou and Penn State about the same quality of team?
Yeah.
Michigan and Georgia performed about the same against those 2 teams. Like they're very even. Like when Michigan has to play a decent team, like I know they kind of beat Penn State up and the score might have not been that close, but like I'm just saying, like, yes, Michigan's beating the crap out of everyone, but like if there was 7 Vandies on Georgia's schedule, they might be beating the crap out of all of them too.
I agree. I think Georgia and Michigan, unlike last year or the year before, I think it could be a really good game. Honestly, I think it could be a good game. I don't see either of those teams beating up on the other team.
They both seem like the 2 best teams.
Yeah.
Like not by far, but they seem like the 2 best teams by just an extra tier there. But anyway, that'll do it for the pod. We've talked long enough. I'm going to be down in Blacksburg, leaving tomorrow for Harrisonburg, Blacksburg Friday. Be at Tots 8 to 10 Friday night. Come out for Friday Night Lights. Make sure you're subscribed to our Twitter feed. It's at 2DeepVT. Subscribe to or follow us on Instagram. It's at 2DeepVT. Subscribe to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Easy to find on there. You can send us an email. It's at 2deep. It's 2deepvt@gmail.com. If you want to make any comments or anything, make sure you subscribe to the Sons of Saturday channel, rate, review, all the good stuff. And until next time, when we're hopefully celebrating being bowl eligible, go Hokies.